I woke up one morning and my husband was gone. My family told me I had never been married and that I was schizophrenic. When I found out the truth, I ran for my life. I woke up to the sharp smell of antiseptic and the steady beep of a heart monitor. I was in my own bedroom, but it looked exactly like a hospital ward. 3 doctors in white coats stood over my bed alongside my parents. My father stepped forward and gently held my hand. He told me I had suffered a severe schizophrenic episode and had been completely unconscious for 3 days. I blinked through the heavy fog in my head and looked at the grand mechanical clock in the corner of the room. The date dial confirmed he was telling the truth. 3 entire days were gone. I panicked and immediately asked where my husband Julian was. My mother exchanged a highly confused look with the doctors. She stroked my hair and softly told me I was never married. I checked my finger and the thing he had bought me with his entire first paycheck was not there. I tried to sit up, but my body felt like lead. They told me Julian was a delusion. They said my broken mind fabricated an entire husband to cope with the immense stress of my graduate studies. I told them they were crazy. This was before the internet, so I checked state records by phoning our local office, and my husband had never existed. I tore my room apart looking for our wedding album, but found absolutely nothing. Every single framed photograph on my vanity showed me standing completely alone. I picked up the heavy receiver of my landline telephone and dialed Julian's brother's number strictly from memory. A receptionist answered and told me I had reached a corporate law firm. I was so confused, as that was his house landline number. I started to believe I was crazy. The doctors kept me heavily sedated and did not let me leave our 2,000-acre manor. The pills they forced down my throat made me weak and only made it harder to remember things. Julian's face started to fade. The smell of his cologne and the sound of his laugh felt like distant blurry dreams. I was completely convinced I was losing my mind. But slowly, I started believing everyone around me. I guess my husband Julian never existed. One morning I decided I could not handle the physical sickness anymore. I secretly palmed my pills and flushed them down the bathroom sink. I needed a clear head. I walked downstairs and found my father drinking his morning coffee. I sat across from him, looked him dead in the eye, and told him the medication was finally working. I told him I realized Julian was not real and I was ready to move on. My father smiled a deeply relieved smile and hugged me. Later that afternoon, I walked out to the old barn to get some fresh air. The medication was finally leaving my system and my head felt lighter. I was not strong enough to ride the horses, so I just let my favorite one out for a walk. But it got excited and it ran off into the forest, so I had to chase it. When I finally caught up to my horse, I saw something glisten inside a bush. I dropped to my knees and dug it out. It was a silver mechanical watch. The exact watch I bought Julian for our first anniversary. The glass face was completely shattered and the leather band was stained with dried blood. My hand shook as I pried the broken back casing open. A tiny piece of folded paper was wedged tightly inside the gears. I carefully unfolded it. It was a rushed handwritten letter from Julian. The ink was smeared, but I could read every single word. He wrote that my family was running a massive criminal syndicate. He had secretly accessed their physical ledgers and discovered they were bribing government officials to shut down competitors and actively ordering hits on people who stood in their way. He wrote that my father found out he knew the truth. The letter ended with Julian telling me my family was coming to kill him and we both needed to run. All the memories came flooding back with absolute crystal clarity. The law firm on the phone was a cover. My family had paid them to intercept the phone number. I was not crazy. I was married to a brilliant man who uncovered their dark secrets, and they murdered him to protect their money. I slipped the watch into my pocket and walked back to the manor, acting perfectly normal. I waited until 2 in the morning when the massive house was completely silent. I crept down the grand staircase and picked the heavy brass lock to my father's private study. I tore through his filing cabinets and found the hidden ledgers. The physical books detailed millions in bribes and payouts to local police and politicians. I found the final payout to a private security firm dated the exact day Julian disappeared. I stuffed the ledgers and a huge stack of emergency cash from the floor safe into a canvas backpack. I climbed out the study window and sprinted across the dark estate grounds. The perimeter alarms tripped right as I reached the stone boundary wall. Floodlights illuminated the lawn and I heard my 2 older brothers shouting my name. I knew the local police were completely on my father's payroll. I hiked through the dense woods for 12 straight hours until I reached the county highway. I hitched a ride with a long-haul truck driver and told him I was escaping a highly abusive situation. He drove me 3 states north. I used the cash to buy bus tickets and kept moving until I reached the Canadian border. I crossed on foot through a rural checkpoint and showed up unannounced at my college roommate's apartment in Montreal. I used her typewriter to draft anonymous letters to the federal authorities and major newspapers. I mailed physical copies of the ledgers and the hit orders to every single agency that could not be bought by my father. The federal raids happened 4 days later. My parents and my brothers were dragged out of our manor in handcuffs. Their corrupt empire completely collapsed overnight. I took the rest of the cash and flew to South America. I live in a quiet coastal town now under a completely new identity. My family is in federal prison and I finally got justice for the man I loved. Subscribe for more daily videos.